Okay, so thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining July's SAP BTP Garage. I'm glad to have everybody here. I'm really excited about today's topic. So we're going to be talking about Ariba Foundation Model and SAP Datasphere. We have two excellent experts that are with us. They've already presented the topic this morning in our APJ call. We have Cyril Blandine and Sven Fuchs. They're going to be covering the SAP Discovery Center mission with the same title, Leverage SAP Ariba Foundation Model in SAP Datasphere. I will provide a link to that mission in just a second. As I mentioned, this session will be recorded. We will provide the recording afterwards. It'll be available here in Teams, but also made available on our SAP BTP Garage playlist, so you can always find it there. The link to the playlist is available in your meeting invitation, but I'll also share a link to that towards the end of the call as well. We will include a Q&A session at the end, so if you have any questions, you can, of course, type them into the chat, but you can also just reserve it until the end at the designated time. If you do type it in the chat, we'll try to answer those as we go along the way, but maybe call it out at the end. Cyril has also published a blog on the SAP community about this mission as well, and also goes into additional details. I will provide a link to that blog post, but it's also a great read if you want to find even more details. And with that, I will hand over to you, Cyril and Sven. Maybe you want to just provide a little bit of an introduction to yourself, and then go ahead and provide the introduction and business context for your mission.
All right, so I'll go ahead with the introduction. I'm Cyril Blandin. I'm in SAP for a few years now, and I'm working as part of the services organization in the procurement space in the ISBN organization. And I'm mainly focusing on extensibility and innovation.
Thanks, Cyril. Okay, let me take over. My name is Sven Fuchs. I'm located out of Munich, Germany, and I'm a solution advisor in ISBN. So this is our LOB, mainly talking about procurement and business network solution portfolio. And my mission is actually to showcase to you, to our customers and partners, how you could utilize our business technology platform in order to extend and customize our solutions that are falling under the ISBN solution portfolio. Okay, and with that, let me share my screen, and please give me a quick confirmation if you can see it.
We can see it. Looks great.
Okay, perfect. So let's run through the agenda very quickly and through the session itself. So we'll give you a very dense and brief introduction into the use case itself, because we want to really make sure that we have enough time to go on the mission detail. That's kind of what you are interested in, to see the details on how to configure, what components it is, and so on and so forth. Nevertheless, we need a bit of an introduction just to understand, or to make you understand, what's the value add, kind of why are we talking to each other at the moment, and then also follow a bit through the architecture itself. So let's kick it off. I mean, the use case that we talk about is a analytical scenario. So it is talking about how you could utilize our advanced analytical capabilities of our business technology platform, specifically on the space of procurement. So this mission talks about how you could get additional insights, valuable insights out of your procurement data. So the solutions that we're talking about when it comes to advanced analytics is SAP Datasphere and SAP Analytics Cloud. And this mission also covers a, let's say, consider it really as a kickstart, because we have just released some business content on SAP Datasphere and SAP Analytics Cloud. And this mission really enables you to start utilizing, start enabling this predefined business content. There are a few reasons why we need to have this use case. So let me run through a couple of points of them. So when we talk about the Ariba suite, the Ariba solutions, they are offering great in-app reporting capabilities, right? So those giving you a great overview on what is going on in your procurement situations. But on the other side, they are very much isolated and only kind of relevant for the Ariba solutions, or specifically to the Ariba modules itself. If you have requirement needs or reporting needs that go beyond that, then you would need to find a different solution. And that's what we saw from our customers, right? The needs for reporting, they have increased. They are going beyond actually what in-app reporting capabilities in Ariba can position and can provide. The second pillar is we see a lot of integration challenges actually. So again, we have a rich set of APIs available when it comes to Ariba, and they are pretty powerful and they're actually also pretty good, right? But when we specifically talk about how we could pull data from Ariba on a larger extent to fulfill those reporting capabilities, we see some challenges. We see challenges in terms of rate limits. We see challenges in terms of, let's say, how data has been pulled through the reporting APIs, right? So this use case and this mission really is abstracting away the complexity on how we handle the Ariba APIs. And last but not least, we know that the predefined business content, it's a great starting point, but it doesn't end there. You still will have your individual requirements on your reporting situations, right? And we also want to make sure that those can be fulfilled. So the business content itself, they can of course be adopted, fine-tuned. So you can add, let's say, new content, new KPIs to it, but you can also fully extend them, right? So one of the examples, of course, is you want to bring in additional data sources and want to have a more holistic reporting on top of that. So let's say you want to bring in S4 data, you want to bring in third-party data. That's, of course, where the power of SAP Datasphere would come in, allowing you a more holistic reporting. So these are just some reasons, some examples why we need to have that case, right? There are, of course, many more reasons associated to that. But it's important to understand that it's an advanced analytical capability use case that we're talking about. Equally important is that it's not just a BTP application that we are covering as part of the Discovery Center mission. It's going beyond that, right? I already touched upon the content that we are having in SAP Datasphere and also SAP Analytics Cloud. And this mission brings it all together, right? So it covers, let's say, the bits and pieces about the data extractor, which acts as a kind of integration channel, kind of an enabler, which is a BTP-based application. But it also covers aspects on how to import, how to configure the artifacts that are available on Datasphere, as well as the artifacts that are available on SAP Analytics Cloud. So when it comes to distribution, right, and by following the mission, we will guide you through where to get what. And distribution channels are different, right? Because our way to distribute BTP applications would be through a GitHub repository, which is all described, of course, as part of the Discovery Center mission. But again, when it comes to the content packages, then it's all related to the content network. So you'll understand that it's not only a BTP CAP application, it's going beyond that, but how do they actually now play all together? So let's quickly touch point on a high-level architecture overview, okay? So we have the SAP Ariba data extractor in the heart, in the center, and this is where all the heavy lifting, all the complicated, the complex API handling takes place. So this is really abstracting away all the complexity that you face day in, day out by consuming APIs of Ariba, right? So what ultimately it is doing is it's retrieving data from the Ariba side and pushing them directly into Datasphere. So we are utilizing the standard APIs of Ariba, mainly the reporting one, so the analytical reporting, the operational reporting, and then we are extracting data and push them into Datasphere. And from Datasphere, Then let's say the aggregation, the modeling aspect, right? The data massaging piece takes place. And we use SAP Analytics Cloud for our reporting layer, where the charts, the KPIs, right, is all nicely presented. So to not spend too much time now on the introduction, I would say, let's directly go into the details of the mission. So Cyril, over to you, please.
Thank you, Sven, for the very nice introduction and explanation of the use case. Let me share my screen. Let me know when you start seeing the screen.
We can, yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So now we're going to dig into the mission itself. As mentioned in the introduction, this mission is quite big. That's not something that we will go over within an hour or half an hour. So we are just going to focus on the specific points that are important, that are complex, and that might be new for this audience. The mission itself is called Leverage SAP Ariba Foundation Model in SAP Datasphere. So there are already quite a lot of products in the name of this mission. As exposed in the simplified architecture, we are leveraging different applications from the SAP ecosystem. The first one is Datasphere, where we have this foundation model, which is all the modeling of the Ariba data. And that's what is the core for this mission. So the whole mission is how to use this model with your SAP Ariba data and how to do some analytics on top of the model. And the whole mission is explaining how to pipe those different products together. So the core is really Datasphere. Below Datasphere, we have the BTP data extractor, which is a side-by-side extension. So using this side-by-side extensibility concept that is fully running on BTP and that is developed using the Cloud Application Programming Model, so the CAP model. And the underlying implementation is in JavaScript with Node.js. This is something that is provided, so it's part of the SAP sample. So we're going to review that as well as part of GitHub, and that is abstracting away the complexity of consuming Ariba APIs and saving the data in Datasphere. The part just before that is SAP Ariba. So we have several applications and modules in SAP Ariba that are accessible through the Ariba APIs. So here we're working with REST APIs that can be enabled on the Ariba developer portals and then consumed by the extractor. On the other end of the foundation model is SAC, SAP Analytics Cloud, which is also the standard solution, so for analytics within SAP. And there is some content, so some business content that is made available on top of the foundation model to give you an idea of what type of KPIs, graphs, metrics you can draw from your SAP Ariba data. So you already have, with this mission, the ability to do the end-to-end scenario. So from Ariba to SAC story, but most importantly, you lay out all the different foundation bricks to build your own use case. So this is foundation model, but as any foundation, you can build on top of it. So you can build your own stories. You can create cross analytics with other sources. You can create your own KPIs. You can extend the model. So it's fully flexible and fully available to you to basically extend on what is provided already. And if you don't want to extend, you just want to explore, there is already some business value on the different stories and the underlying data that is provided as part of the business content. The way the mission is structured here is in the discover part, you have links to the different technology bricks because as mentioned, there are lots of different products. You might not all be familiar with all those products. So the SAP Ariba side, the side-by-side extensibility on BTP with the CAP model, Datasphere, and SAP Analytics Cloud. So here we have a set of links so you can get more familiar with those technology and learn a little bit about the technology. Then there are some information about preparing the landscape. One of the key parts is BTP, so the extractor, so the CAP application that is extracting the Ariba data needs to be deployed on this on BTP. So you need to prepare the landscape with a global account, with a sub account. And if you're familiar with side-by-side extensibility, you probably are familiar with the way those applications are storing data, which is usually in a HANA database that is also hosted on SAP BTP. Here, however, we are using a different concept. So we don't duplicate the data. We are writing the data directly into Datasphere. So technically in the HANA database underlying Datasphere. And that's something that is not extremely common in extensibility scenario. And that's why I want to spend a little bit more time explaining how this is done and what is required to basically configure this process and this integration between the BTP application and Datasphere. So this concept is a standard concept in Datasphere. This is something that is called SQL data warehousing, and that requires a little bit of back and forth between BTP and Datasphere to do the setup. So the first thing you need to do is to create your BTP infrastructure. So here we're already, let me go one step back. We're already having this infrastructure. So we have a global account. We created a sub account that will specifically host the extractor application, so the integration layer. And in this sub account, we have the Cloud Foundry environment, which is the runtime for the BTP application, in which we have a space where the application is hosted. So that's the first step that you need to do, is to create all this hierarchy of global accounts, sub-accounts, and Cloud Foundry space. And from the URL here, you can get your space ID. Now, that's it for the first part on BTP. Now you need to go on Datasphere and to also prepare your infrastructure. So here in Datasphere, you need to create a space that needs to be called SAP_content, because, and that's in this space that you're going to later on import the business content. If you go in the space management here, there is a specific part which is called HDI containers, and that's where you will see whether or not you have in your instance the SQL data warehousing enabled. By default, it's not enabled. So if you didn't do it, then you'll have to do it. And here, instead of the plus to add container, you will see a link to the ticket process where you can do this enablement. As part of this enablement, so that's something that is done by SAP through ticket process, and you need to provide which Cloud Foundry space on BTP you want to access this infrastructure from. So that's why you need to create first the BTP infrastructure and get your space ID. So then when you enable SQL data warehousing in Datasphere, you can provide this information and you have the trust created. As a side note, this process can take a little bit of time. So when you start with the mission, do not expect to complete everything in a row. There will be some waiting time because there are some of the activities that are on the SAP side through tickets. So that's one of them. If you're familiar with Ariba, when you create an Ariba application, so basically you generate the credential to access the Ariba APIs, that's also through a ticket process, and that's also something that can take 24 hours. So you need to take that into account when working on the mission. Closing the side notes, once you have done the enablement for SQL data warehousing, you need to create a database user. So that's the one that is created here, which will be a technical user with a specific set of permissions, so reads, writes, and read HDI, that will allow the BTP extractor application to write directly into the underlying HANA infrastructure in Datasphere. Once you've done that, you can simply copy the credentials. So here you have the information for the connection for the user. And then the next step is to go back to BTP, where you will start creating services instance. So here, similarly, if you're familiar with BTP, whenever you have an application, it's bound to several services instance for the services that it requires. And there is also the possibility to create what is called a user-provided service instance. Basically, that's a good way to share information across your application. Typically here, the credential for the BTP, for the Datasphere HANA database. So in order to do so, you just need to create user-provided instance, and then you paste the information that you retrieve from Datasphere. That's the first step. The second step, you will need to manually create a SAP HANA schema and HDA container service with this specific name. So that's also explained in the mission. And when you create it, you need to specify the database ID for your specific Datasphere tenant, as well as the schema that is also provided in the mission, which is the schema used by the extractor. This is important because that's some information that changes for every deployment. Therefore, it cannot be embedded into the extractor itself. In order to retrieve that, you need to go in your Datasphere tenant. And if you click on the I here, you'll have the information about the tenant and the database ID. So that's the database ID that you need. Once you create it, you have all you need in terms of manual configuration for the data extractor to, once deployed, to write directly the data it extracts in the HANA database in Datasphere. Now, you need to deploy the extractor itself. So, as we mentioned, the extractor is a side-by-side extension. This is distributed through GitHub. So in the mission here, you have directly the link. So here you have the link to the GitHub with the data extractor. I already opened it here. So all the code is available to you. And if you want to dig into that, you can definitely look into the code. You can also do the modification of the code if you need to. But as is, that should be enough for the extraction need and for the mission. So you can just clone the repository, install the Cloud Foundry command line interface. So to be able to connect to your BTP Cloud Foundry space from your local computer, and then run this command that will simply deploy the application to BTP. So that there is already, as part of the repository, an archive that is provided, and that is going to deploy the application as well as all the services that the application requires. And that's what we have here. So you see, when you deploy the archive, it creates all the services that are required. So job scheduling services, audit log services, etc., etc. And they will also create the container in the HANA database in Datasphere. If you check here on the application, you will see that you have actually two applications deployed as part of the deployment. The first one is just a sidecar module. So it's the database deployer that is just going to be used at deployment time to generate all the artifacts in the database. And the second one is the actual extractor, so the server or the service for the extractor that will be running and extracting the data from Ariba. Once done, you need to go back to Datasphere and you will see the specific HDI container. So if you click on plus, you will see the ones that have been created, and you can just select it and add it to your space, and that will make the container and the data available to your to Datasphere, and therefore to the business content in Datasphere that you'll download later. So that's the first part that is a little bit tricky about the connection between Datasphere and BTP. And once you have this up and running, you can go into the next step, which is the configuration of the extractor. So there are a set of destinations you need to set. So it's also detailed in the mission to basically provide the extractor with the credential to your Ariba APIs. So the extractor will be able to retrieve data from the APIs. and then write it to Datasphere. I will not cover that. That's fairly standard, so that's nothing really tricky. The other part that I want to cover here is once you have these deployed and you want to start running data loads on a regular basis, you need to go into the job scheduling service. So linked to the extractor, actually, before you do that, you need to create views in the Ariba APIs. So the Ariba APIs are by default open. They provide visibility over the different objects in Ariba. So for example, on the procurement side, you have contracts or contract line items, but those schema can change slightly with the releases. So in order to avoid issues with those changes, the first step is to create a custom view over the same object that will not only stabilize what is being exported, and also it extracts more information than what the standard views are offering. So it really extracts everything that is available for contract or for requisition. In order to create those custom views is just a couple of API calls to the Ariba API. So it's purely on the Ariba API side. And we have, as well as part of the mission, a Postman collection that will help you to set up those calls to do the call to the Ariba API. Once you create these custom views, and those custom views are fully available, so if we go in the mission, they are also in the GitHub repository, so you'll be able to retrieve them from GitHub. Here you have the list of the ones that are used by the contents, and you have, so for example, analytical API, sourcing, and event participation. And here you have the direct link to where you can find the view in the GitHub repository. So here it's analytical API, then we said sourcing and event participation. So that's the JSON format for the view. So that's what you need to basically send to the analytical API from Ariba with this name for the view, and that will create this specific custom view that later on is going to be used by the extractor. So now that you have your views created, you need to have the extraction running. So in order to do so, you need to set up jobs through the job scheduling service. So if you go to the application here, that will be your application URL that you need to copy. And then if you go into the service bindings, you will see the job scheduler. And you can go to the job scheduler here dashboard directly. So I already have it open here. And you can create jobs to basically start the extraction of the data. The way the API works, so for the analytical and operational reporting API, is asynchronous, meaning you need to do several steps to extract the data. The first one is to create a job that will run in the background for some time, depending on the amount of data that is extracted. And then you need to check from time to time whether the job finished running on the Ariba side. And once finished, you need to retrieve the data from Ariba. So download the different zip files with the results of the extraction. So all that is done automatically by the extractor. And that's why this complexity is abstracted away. But what you need to schedule is 3 calls. First, the creation of the job, then the verification whether the job is finished or not, and finally, the processing of the finished jobs. In order to do that, so we take an example here. That's jobs that were created for this environment. You have, I got timed out. So you have the job name. So you need to create a job name. Here we put the name of the view that is extracting. Here you have the URL of your application that we could find in BTP. And here there is the job admin and create job endpoint, because that's the service exposed by the application to do the creation of the job. Then in the schedule, so here we have a schedule that is on a daily basis at a specific time, and there is a payload, a JSON payload that is sent to the application, which contains the real name and the name of the view. So here, every day at 5, it will send that to the extractor, that will then trigger an extraction load for the Ariba API for this specific view. Because the APIs have rate limits, so there is a limited amount of jobs you can create per hour and per day, you need to schedule it accordingly. So you cannot schedule all your job creation at the same time. That's where you need to pay attention to when you create the schedule. So you can create a job every 15 minutes, for example. So the job for the orders at 5, then the job for the requisition at 5:15, etc., and you will stay below the limit. So that's the first thing. That's triggering the job and creating the extractor. Then you have another one that you need to schedule, which is the update job status. So same URL, but different endpoints. And this will prompt the extractor to just check all the running jobs in the Ariba APIs and update whether or not they're still running or if they're finished. Here, the schedule can be a little bit different. So here we have a schedule that is recurring at repeated interval every hour. So every hour, the extractor will check and update the status of the pending jobs. And here the payload you send is just the realm ID. And finally, the last step is the extraction of the data. So there is this last job that is required, which is the process finished job endpoint that will basically, for all the completed jobs, trigger the extraction for the data and save the data into Datasphere. So here, that's also something that you can run hourly. And you need to schedule it a little bit after the update job status. So then you can give enough time for the update to occur before you process the finished job. So you can schedule it, for example, 5 minutes after the update job status. So that will be what is required in terms of scheduling to basically do all the extraction. So that's it for the BTP part. Now let's go into the business content itself. So the SAP Ariba Foundation business content in Datasphere. So if you go here in the data builder and you look, for example, for acquisition line item, you will see several objects. And that's very standard for the business content in Datasphere. So all the business content that is released by SAP in Datasphere follows the same hierarchy, and there are several layers for the data that have different purpose. The first one here, so for the line item, is the LT layer or the local table layer. In this table, you just have a one-to-one mapping of what is available from the extractor. There is no formatting, there is no logic. It's just exposing the same model, but in Datasphere. And that's why we have this LT. Here in the technical name, you will see you have two different ones, one with _OP and one with _AN. So the OP means that this data is coming from the operational reporting API, and the AN means it comes from the analytical reporting API. Since this data object is available in both, both are exposed. You'll see as well that there are many data objects that are modeled in the foundation models that are not necessarily used in the stories that are provided later on. So that's the first layer. That's the LT, the local table layer. Then you have the IL, which is inbound layer, where already some manipulation of the data occurs. So there is some normalization of the data. For example, we convert the dates from timestamp to date objects. There are some renaming of the field to have something a bit more human readable. So there are some small modifications on the data occurring on this layer. So that reads from the local table layer, and then that provides a view on top of it with additional modification. Then you have the HL for harmonization layer. That's where you have a little bit more modification, so more related to the semantic split of the data. So that's where we'll define what is a measure, what is an attribute. If it's an amount, then it's linked as well with the currency. And we also have associations between the different data objects. So for example, here, if you want to have requisition line items with the requisition header data and create a harmonization layer with both the data here, that's in the HL layer that you will do it. You will see as well here in the provided model, there are some that are fairly simple. So just a one-to-one projection of the layer before with the creation of measures, etc. And some that are really complex where there are a lot of calculations to serve basically the stories from SAC. And finally, you have the RL layer, which is the reporting layer. So that's on top of the HL layer. And that's where you define what you want to expose for SAC as a model. So if you don't want to expose all the measures that exist in the HL layer, you define that here. If you don't want to expose all the attributes, that's also a possibility. If you want to calculate new attributes on the fly, that's also a place where you can do so. So that's the layering model in Datasphere. If I just quickly open them, you will see. So that's here we're opening the lowest layer. So that's really the local table layer. We see here that's so we have the information about what is the key. So the key for the requisition line item is the ID, the realm it comes from, and the nickname of the requisition. We have the data types that are coming from the extractor, and we have the row name from the API and from the extractor. There is not much more here. And you see here we have 246 columns. So quite a lot of data is extracted. If we go one layer up, so here if we go in the inbound layer, you can see that now it's low code, no code interface. So you don't need to go into programming to modify this layer. You can just drag and drop the different elements, and there are a few things happening. So here it's already joined with a table that we'll cover later, which is the realm settings. So that's, and here you see there is an M in the end of the name for manual. So we'll cover it later on during this presentation. And there are a couple of things that are being done. So here there are calculated columns. And if you check here, that's basically the normalization of the dates from timestamp to date object. That's what I was mentioning earlier. There is also here a projection, and the projection is removing the custom fields and removing the timestamp data. So it's cleaning up the data that is exposed. So on the extractor side, there are a set of fields to handle the custom fields from Ariba, and here they are removed. So basically, they are not used for the upper layer, but they are still modeled here. So the main reason for that is because the standard business content provided is not relying on custom fields, as custom fields depend from customer to customer, but those fields are modeled. So later on, if you implement that business content for you or for a customer, and you want to integrate some of the custom fields that this customer has, you already have it up to the integration layer, and then you need to modify the model for the inbound harmonization and reporting layer to basically massage this data and expose the data as you want for SAC. Going back here, now we have the harmonization layer. So again, that's where we do the separation between the measures and the attributes. So we add some semantic information to the data. And here you will see that here we have all the measures. So all the amounts field are measure. We have the default aggregation here. This is sum. We can change that as well here. And all the attributes, so the other fields for this specific data object. If you scroll down, you also see the associations. So in this data, you have lots of IDs that correspond to models, to object in other models. So basically, that's what it is here for the cost center. So thanks to this association, with the ID of the cost center you have in the requisition line item, you also get access to the full cost center object that is modeled somewhere else in the business content and is there here associated directly to this view. Similarly, you have that for the commodity code, and that things that can be used later on in the story in the SAC side for drill down capabilities. Finally, you have the reporting layer here. So if you open the reporting layer, still low code, no code with drag and drop. And here you define which measure you want to expose. So here you see we had many more measures on the harmonization layer, only few are exposed for the reporting need for this specific model. And then here you have the association, so the association to the commodity, and you see all the other fields brought by the commodity model that is associated by ID in this object. So you will have all this information available as part of your reporting layer. So that's how the layering model works. All the content that is provided is modifiable, so you can adjust it, you can enrich it, you can do some new layers, so new harmonization layers, new reporting layers. And as Sven mentioned, one of the use case here is to do cross analytics with other data sources. So not only Ariba, but if you want to consolidate, let's say, your purchase order from Ariba and from another system that you already integrated with Datasphere, that's possible thanks to those models. Once you have the reporting layer, we can go to SAC, SAP Analytics Cloud. So as part of the business content provided, there are 3 stories. So those stories are on top of this foundational model, just to showcase what can be done. So there is already some business value there because there are a few KPIs that are relevant to procurement that are embedded in those stories, as well as different visualization that we got from the common customers' asks. But of course, this is just a showcase. You can modify it, tailor it to your customers' needs, or create your own based on the customer needs, if they have something completely different in terms of reporting needs. The 3 stories we have are related to procurement. So all the end-to-end SAP Ariba supported process. The first one is focusing on the operational side of it with more operational KPIs and graphs. The second one is more on the strategic side. So looking long-term, 5 years of data to see the trends and to review the KPIs more from the strategic perspective. And finally, you have the supplier 360, which is reviewing your spend data from the supplier perspective. So you can see for a specific subset of suppliers, the spend that is generated, the compliance of the spend, et cetera, et cetera. So it's different angle on the same data. All these data and models are documented on the help portal. So if you go on the Datasphere business content, you have value analytics for SAP Ariba procurement, which is the official name of the business package. And here you have the whole details about the architecture, the model, the different layers, and the stories that are provided with some examples. So here, if you check the stories, you will see those 3 stories. As I mentioned earlier, if you check the architecture, you see which story uses which model, et cetera, et cetera. So you have information available as part of the SAP Help portal. And finally, if I go to one story, so here that's the operational reporting story. So that's giving you an overview of the end-to-end procurement process in Ariba. And you have here several pages that gives you some visibility on the different part of the process. So here we are on the supplier management on this specific page. So you see for the past year, the number of onboarded supplier, number that got qualified, number that are certified, the cycle time for onboarding in days. Here we overlay as well the risk exposure. So here you see on those suppliers which one have high risk, medium risk, or low risk as per the SAP Ariba risk information. You got the geographical distribution. So you have some information about your suppliers and what you onboarded. You can go to different pages to see the sourcing information, contracts, or buying information. So let's go, for example, here on the buying side, where here you have an overview of your purchase orders. So you have visibility over your spend, the spend that is managed under contract, the spend that is managed under catalog, the spend that is not managed under catalog. So then you can also start driving changes to optimize, increase the compliance, and basically get better visibility on how to manage your spend. Here you have also a set of filters. So you can filter by commodity, by requester, supplier. So you can basically slice and dice the data as you want. Here, for example, you also have, so here we have the view by commodity. And that's where if you click on this one, that will filter the whole story. So you see only the one that is for information technology, broadcast, and telecommunication. And here you have drill down capability. So thanks to what we saw earlier on the linking of the dimension to your model, then you have the ability to drill down. So if you drill down here, you will see the lower level of community. So below the telecommunication, et cetera, So you see the distribution on the lower level of the commodity code. So that gives you some slicing and dicing option. Not going to be going too thorough on the stories themselves, because we can spend an hour there, and that's not really the main topic of the mission. But there are quite a lot of very valuable information that you can find, and business KPI that you can find in those stories. Last but not least, in Datasphere, for the story to work, there are a couple more things that you need to do, which are manual data inputs. So as we saw earlier, there was one or two tables with an A in the end, which is basically manual configuration that you need to do. So if I go back to, if I go back here to the data builder and look for example, the realm settings. So there is this manual table for realm settings, and that's where you need to manually input the information about the realm, so the Ariba realm that you're working with. So here you need to enter the realm ID, the base currency, reporting currency, the commodity code domain, the reporting realm ID. If it's a reported realm, is different. The name is different from the realm you're extracting the data. So that will be then used in the different layers to basically convert whatever data we get from the API. So when we get something in reporting currency, there is no information from the API of what the reporting currency is. So that's what it will fetch in this manual table, the reporting currency that is configured on your realm. Similarly, you need to configure a couple of other manual tables for the risk exposure, for example. So when we saw here in the supplier manager, the high, medium, low, typically what the API is providing is 1, 2, 3, 4. So there is also a manual table that you need to fill with the different exposure levels. So if I check that here, so you see the table with the, you will see the table with the different exposure levels, and you will be able to basically define the values, the values for that will match the 1, 2, 3. So then you can show exactly, I was on the correct table, so you can show exactly the value that will be displayed for the risk 1, the risk 2, et cetera. So here, for that, you need to go into data editor. And from the data editor, then you'll be able to start adding your entries. So here, there's just 4, where you basically write down the exposure level description. For other table, there might be a little bit more information. So you also have the possibility to import it in a CSV manner. Of course, all these, So it's timing out. All this is described in the mission itself. So as part of the project board, you have all these configuration detailed in the Datasphere, finalize the Datasphere configuration with all the manual tables that require manual input for the finalization of the configuration for the models. So that's it for the mission. All the things we saw today and we were showing directly in the system is described in those cards. There are a few other steps that are described in those cards which are not as complex or as specific to this setup. That's why we didn't cover it for the sake of time. But with the mission itself, you should have the proper information to do really the end-to-end setup. So from Ariba to SAC in order to have the use case we were showing. That's it for me for today. Now we have a little bit of time if there are some questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Cyril. Sven has been doing an excellent job navigating all of the questions in the chat. So several have come through, but I think Sven has tackled all of them except for one here that just came in, which is it also possible to create any automation job and to populate such configuration?
Maybe if you can unmute yourself. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Which configuration?
Hi, Cyril. This is Aditi. The configuration which you were showing just now in Ariba to create the tables, which will then can be monitored from the dashboard in SAC.
The manual tables, you mean?
Yes, the manual tables.
So yeah, the thing is, unfortunately, as part of the content network delivery, so where we expose this business content, there is no possibility to provide manual tables data. So that's why it needs to be manually configured. So after you import the business content, you will need to just configure it manually, but that's a one-off. So that's really something that you do at setup time, and then there is no need to change that later on. So the effort is really minimal because it's just a few tables and a few fields per table. So there is no real need to start setting up some automation. And once it's configured, then you don't need to touch it anymore.
Okay, that's for this scenario, no, Cyril? Like if we have some other scenario, for example, for any other Ariba, for the non-default exposure level, for example, if we have like a very high or a very low, something like that. So we simply add in these values here, you mean, instead of creating some automated thing.
Yeah, so
okay,
depending on what you need, so you might have as well, if you extend on the model, you want to do some specific mapping, or you have some additional data that is not coming from Ariba that you want to have in Datasphere because you want to combine it with the Ariba data. You can create your own local tables like this, or you even can have some similar integration that exists for the standard Ariba data. So you can also, if you're technical enough, modify the extractor to basically create your model. So here in the extractor, we have as part of the database. So here, let's open one for the contract. So those are the CDS models for the different data objects. So you can also create your own that is not necessarily Ariba and use the same extractor infrastructure to write in the HDI container in Datasphere. That's also a possibility.
Okay, thank you very much.
Or you can, there's some data, for example, payment terms that are not necessarily modeled from the Ariba side, but you can retrieve from S4 directly because there are already other business content for S4. So you can basically combine the models for S4 and your S4 data with your Ariba data there.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Thank you very much.
I see as well, is it possible to briefly repeat the step where GitHub is cloned and npm run is executed? Yes, so basically here, there is the information about cloning and forking the repository. There are some links on how to do that. So you need the GitHub command tool. You can as well just basically go back here and download it as a zip if you don't have the GitHub command tool. And then you need to run, so you also need to have Node.js deployed on your laptop, so you can run this npm run mta deploy, which is going to basically consume the MTA file, which is here, which is basically the package where you have all the definition of the different applications, the services that they consume, how they bind together, and basically deploy that and create all these instances and deploy all the application leveraging these instances in BTP. So that's something that should be done fairly quickly. This is not done inside the Business Application Studio. Indeed, you can do it inside Business Application Studio if you want to. In this mission, we didn't go that way because we didn't want to have yet another product to take care of. So you could basically do it directly on your own laptop. But if you want, you can do it in the Business Application Studio. That's the exact same thing indeed, if you're familiar with it. So that will not be documented as part of the mission, but if you're familiar with this process, you can basically link the GitHub repository to Business Application Studio and do the exact same thing. So deploy to your BTP sub-account from Business Application Studio.
Hey, hi, Poshan here. So why do we need, say, for example, S4HANA, right? We just go to the folder and then we select the CDS views, whatever that we needed. So why in case of Ariba, we needed to have an additional extension on BTP extractor? So what is the difference? Because we are too early. We are in too early stages of integrating with Ariba. That's the reason why, or even going forward, S4HANA also will be having the same kind of extraction modeling.
It's because S4HANA is exposing directly the CDS views. You can directly link to the underlying S4 database under S4HANA. So that's not the same technology that is currently powering Ariba, and there is not those capabilities to access directly the data from Ariba. It's not exposing CDS view or HANA database directly. That's why you need to extract the information, and the only way for the moment to extract the information for Ariba is through those available APIs. So the analytical API, the risk API, the supplier API, and these APIs are not necessarily very easy to consume when you need to do en masse extraction like this. That's why there is this extractor that kind of abstracts away the complexity. In the future, there might be built-in connectors in Datasphere, but that's not something that is available as of today.
Thank you.
So I think that takes us right up to the hour. So thank you so much, Cyril and Sven, for providing your expertise on both the business use case, the BTP use case, and also giving us the hands-on demonstration and how everybody can access the resources today. You guys have done an excellent job in both the presentation and also the materials that are available. So please, everybody, access the Discovery Center mission. It's free of charge to create an account and also to find all of the information there. So please do so. I've provided a link to where you'll be able to find the recording of today's call, as well as the other BTP Garage recordings that we've done previously. Next time, so on September 12th, we're going to be featuring the mission Activate SAP Joule in SuccessFactors. So make sure you join us then. You should receive the meeting invite for that soon. And thank you guys so much. So thank you to our experts and thank you for the community, and everybody have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.